You wake up in the middle of the night. The fire beside you has almost disappeared. The air inside your shelter is so cold that every breath becomes a cloud of white vapor. Your fingers feel stiff. Your feet have gone numb. Outside, the wind moves across a frozen landscape where temperatures can fall below -40 degrees Celsius. There is no heater, no electricity, no insulated walls, no warm bed waiting for you, only darkness, ice, and the small flame that stands between you and the cold. Now imagine surviving like this for not one night, but an entire season. For thousands of years, humans lived through some of the harshest winters Earth has ever experienced. During the last ice age, glaciers covered huge parts of the northern hemisphere, and average temperatures in some regions were several degrees colder than today. But the strangest part is not that humans survived. The strangest part is where they survived, because some ancient humans were living beyond the Arctic Circle more than 30,000 years ago. And they were not simply escaping the cold, they were building a life inside it. The story of how they did this changes the way you understand human survival. Because ancient humans were not powerful because they were stronger than nature. They survived because they learned how to work with it. Around 31,000 years ago, a group of prehistoric humans lived along the Yana River in northern Siberia. Today, this region is one of the coldest places on Earth. The site they left behind is called Yana Rhinoceros Horn Site, or Yana RHS. It was discovered in 1993 by Russian archaeologist Vladimir Pitulko. When researchers excavated the site, they found something unexpected. Stone tools, animal bones, ivory artifacts, evidence that humans were not just passing through, they were staying. At a location more than 500 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle, humans had created a survival system in an environment where many modern humans would struggle. But surviving there required solving one impossible problem: heat. The human body is designed to maintain a temperature close to 37 degrees Celsius. If your core temperature drops below 35 degrees Celsius, hypothermia begins. Your muscles weaken, your thinking slows. Eventually, your body loses the ability to protect itself. For Ice Age humans, staying warm was not comfort. It was the difference between life and death. The first solution was simple: fire. But controlling fire was not as easy as lighting a match. Evidence from archaeological sites suggests humans had been using fire for hundreds of thousands of years. At Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, researchers found evidence of controlled fire used dating back around 1 million years. But Ice Age survival required more than simply creating flames. It required carrying fire, maintaining it, protecting it from freezing winds. A dead fire in a winter landscape could become a deadly mistake. Ancient humans also changed the way they used animals. At Yana RHS, researchers discovered remains from animals such as woolly rhinoceroses and mammoths. These animals were not only sources of meat, they were survival resources. Their bones could become tools, their hides could become insulation, their fat could become fuel. A single large animal could provide thousands of calories and materials needed for survival. This was a completely different relationship with nature. A mammoth was not just something to hunt, it was a shelter, a source of warmth, a source of clothing, a source of technology. But there was another challenge. The cold does not only attack your body, it attacks your food supply. During winter, plants disappear. Many animals migrate. Hunting becomes more difficult. A mistake could mean weeks without enough food. At Yana RHS, archaeologists found evidence that humans were carefully processing and storing resources. They were planning ahead. And this reveals something important about Ice Age humans. They were not surviving winter one day at a time. They were preparing for months they had not even reached yet. But preparation alone was not enough, because the coldest winters created another problem. A problem that forced humans to completely rethink where they lived. And the evidence from another Ice Age site shows just how far they were willing to go. Thousands of years before modern houses, humans had to answer a question that still matters today. Where do you go when the environment itself becomes dangerous? For Ice Age humans, the answer was not always a cave. Sometimes they built their own world. One of the clearest examples comes from Mezhyrich, a prehistoric settlement in modern-day Ukraine. Around 15,000 years ago, hunter-gatherers created structures unlike anything many researchers expected from this period. When archaeologists excavated the site in 1965, they discovered the remains of circular huts made from the bones of woolly mammoths. More than 100 mammoth bones could be used in a single structure. Jaw bones formed foundations. Large skulls created walls. Tusks helped support the roof. Inside, researchers found fireplaces, stone tools, and evidence of daily activities. This was not a temporary hiding place. It was a carefully designed shelter, a place built for survival. But here's where it gets stranger. The mammoth-bone houses were not only protecting humans from the cold, they were changing how humans experienced time. During extreme winters, survival depended on staying productive while the outside world became almost impossible to use. The shelter became a workplace, a kitchen, a place for teaching, a place where stories and knowledge could be passed from one generation to another. And this mattered because Ice Age survival was not only about physical strength, it was about information. A young person who learned how to track animals, preserve food, or repair clothing carried knowledge that could determine whether the group survived the next winter. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham has studied how human adaptation was connected to changes in cooking and energy use. His research suggests that controlling fire and preparing food played a major role in human evolution. Fire was not just a source of warmth. It changed how humans spent their time. It allowed them to process food more efficiently. It allowed them to remain active after sunset. It created a social space during the longest nights of the year. But staying warm required another invention, something you use every day without thinking about it: clothing. For a long time, researchers debated when humans first began wearing clothes. The problem was simple: clothing disappears, animal skins decay, fibers break down. Unlike stone tools, ancient clothing rarely survives for tens of thousands of years. But biology provided another clue. In 2003, researchers led by Mark Stoneking studied human body lice. Their genetic analysis suggested that clothing lice separated from head lice approximately 170,000 years ago. This means humans were likely wearing clothing around that time. Long before agriculture, long before cities, long before recorded history, clothing changed everything. It allowed humans to move into environments where their bodies alone could not survive. The human body is not naturally built for Arctic conditions. Compared with animals like polar bears or woolly mammoths, humans have very little natural insulation. We do not have thick fur. We do not have layers of fat designed for extreme cold. Instead, humans created external adaptations. Animal skins became artificial fur. Bone needles became tools for creating fitted clothing. At sites like Sangir in Russia, dating back around 34,000 years, archaeologists discovered thousands of decorative beads and evidence of carefully made garments. These clothes were not random pieces of animal hide. They were designed. They were fitted. They showed planning and skill. But surviving the longest winters required more than clothing, fire, and shelter. There was another invisible enemy. The cold itself changed how humans moved, hunted, and cooperated. In freezing environments, one person alone had very limited chances. A group could share responsibilities. One person maintained the fire, another prepared food, another repaired equipment, another watched for danger. Human survival in the Ice Age was becoming a collective system, and this reveals something unexpected about prehistoric humans. The coldest environments did not destroy human societies. In some ways, they strengthened the behaviors that made humans uniquely successful. But the final piece of the puzzle is the most surprising, because surviving extreme winters was not only about fighting the cold. It was about understanding the world around you better than anything else alive. And one discovery from the Ice Age shows how humans began turning the environment itself into a survival tool. Around 20,000 years ago, the world was still locked inside the last ice age. Huge glaciers covered northern regions. Sea levels were much lower than today because enormous amounts of water were trapped inside frozen ice sheets. The landscape was changing constantly. Rivers moved, animals migrated, weather patterns shifted. For humans living in this world, survival depended on one critical ability: understanding patterns. At the archaeological site of Dolní Věstonice in the Czech Republic, researchers found evidence of advanced planning among Ice Age hunter-gatherers dating back around 30,000 years. They discovered tools, hearths, animal remains, and some of the earliest known fired clay objects. These discoveries showed that prehistoric humans were not simply reacting to danger. They were observing. They were experimenting. They were creating solutions before problems appeared. This ability became especially important during winter. A successful hunter needed to understand animal movement. A family needed to know where water would remain available. A group needed to recognize which areas offered protection from storms. The environment became a giant survival map. Every footprint in the snow, every animal trail, every seasonal change contained information. Researchers studying traditional hunter-gatherer societies have shown that this type of environmental knowledge can contain thousands of details passed between generations. For prehistoric humans, knowledge was survival technology. A stone tool could break, a shelter could collapse, but information could travel, and it could keep an entire group alive. But there was one final challenge. Even with fire, clothing, shelter, and knowledge, the Ice Age remained unpredictable. A single failed hunt, a damaged shelter, a long storm. Any of these could threaten survival. This is where human cooperation became one of the most powerful adaptations. At Shanidar cave in Iraq, researchers discovered Neanderthal remains showing evidence of individuals who survived serious injuries. One skeleton, known as Shanidar 1, had multiple injuries including damage to an arm and possible vision problems. Yet this individual survived for years. The evidence suggests that others helped him. They shared resources. They protected someone who could no longer fully contribute. This changes the way you imagine prehistoric life. The Ice Age was not only a story of individuals fighting alone against nature, it was a story of groups creating systems of survival. Humans survived the longest winters because they combined many small advantages. Fire gave warmth. Clothing created protection, shelters created stability, knowledge created preparation, cooperation created resilience. No single invention saved humans from the cold. The advantage came from combining everything together. And this may be the most surprising part. The ancient humans who lived through freezing worlds were not physically superior to you. Their bodies were still vulnerable. Their children were still fragile. Their lives were still uncertain. The difference was that they transformed their surroundings into tools. They used animal bones as architecture. They used fire as technology. They used stories as survival equipment. They used cooperation as protection against a world that could change overnight. Today, you live surrounded by systems designed to keep nature away. Walls separate you from storms. Heating separates you from winter. Stores separate you from hunger. But underneath all of those layers is the same human mind that once watched the stars above frozen landscapes and searched for the safest path through the snow. The cold did not create humanity, but surviving it revealed what humans had always been capable of. A species that could enter the harshest environments on Earth and somehow make them feel like home.